Awesome. So hi, everyone. Like I said, thanks so much for joining today. We're really excited to have everybody here. As a quick note, we are recording the session, so a copy of the event will be shared to our Go Abroad Waterloo page. So if you have a friend that maybe can't attend today or you want to share with friends afterwards, please direct them to the Go Abroad Waterloo page. It will be uploaded within the next few days. So my name is Hope, and I'm going to be the host for today. I'm a Global Learning Coordinator in the Student Success Office. And I'm joined today by our panelists. So we have Subhan, Katelyn, Dorothy, and Connor should be joining us a little later on. But we'll be happy to hear about their exchange experience. So between the four of them, they've gone on exchange to Europe, Australia, and Asia. So all over the world, which is really cool to hear their experiences today. So today's live chat, we'll start out with our panelists talking about their exchange experience. And then after they share their experience, we'll have time for question and answer in the middle. We'll have about 20 minutes to answer any questions that you may have. And then we ask that these questions are more about their experience and not necessarily about the application process. So just wanting to know more about their experience is great. And that if you are interested in going on exchange, we'll let you know what your next steps are before wrapping up the session. So before we start, just a few housekeeping items. So on the bottom of your screen, you may have to click the chat button to access the chat. And this is where you're going to ask questions that you may have about our panelists' experience abroad. You will not have access to audio, so all questions will need to be submitted in the chat. When asking a question, please just make sure that you are submitting questions to everyone, and that just makes sure that everyone can see it and that we're not missing any questions that come in. So while the questions are coming in, we're going to be compiling the questions and asking our guests after they share their experience. But in some cases, we will also answer them replying in the chat. So we'll do our best to answer all of them throughout the session. And then just a reminder that today's live chat is intended to be a safe and inclusive space for all students. So please just making sure you're respectful when interacting with one another. And then also throughout the session, if we refer to any links, we'll post those in the chat and you can click on those. Those links will be posted by our Ask Us panelist. So before we start, I just have a quick little Mentimeter to do. So for Menti, you might have to, you can have your phone out or you can click another tab on your computer. But before we start, I want to know, where in the world do you think this campus is? It's a beautiful campus. It looks really magical. So to access Menti, you can just Google menti.com and then type in the code 2994803. We have lots of people on the call. We have about 24 students, which is great. So I'll wait for a few more responses to come in. The link is in the chat if you're having trouble accessing it. So do you think it's in the UK, in Switzerland, in Norway, or in Sweden? We would love to hear your thoughts, your guesses. I'll leave it open for 30 more seconds to get your responses in. It looks like a beautiful campus wherever it is. Okay, so let's see. The results are in. A lot of people guessed NTNU Norway, a few in Sweden, one in Switzerland, and none in the UK. So for those of you who answered NTNU in Norway, you are correct. It's a beautiful campus, and we'll speak a little more to that campus when our second panelist talks. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Subhan, whose exchange experience was in Sweden. So, Subhan, take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's Subhan here. I went to exchange in Sweden in Lund University. This was during the fall 2019 term, and I am in mechatronics engineering. So my exchange term was divided into two study periods. In the first one, I had a month-long orientation, and I was taking a full course load. So an average day was basically lectures in the morning, and then lunch with some Swedish friends, and then we'll get together and do just schoolwork. And then in the evening, we would have social events. So during orientation, we'd just get together with our mentor group, and we'll likely have dinner, and then followed by a club night or any sort of just event for orientation. And then after that, in the evenings, we would have just nation events. There were a lot of little small student-oriented nations, and then they would host events every evening. So we'll go to those after orientation was done. And then in the second study period, I only had one course, so I had a lot more time to travel. So an average day was basically just exploring a new place almost every other day. Um, I really loved the Swedish culture. I think it was really easy to fit in, especially within Lund. It's such a popular exchange destination, and the whole town is very student oriented, a lot more than Waterloo even. So it was really easy to fit in, and they have this fancy fika culture, which is just like coffee chats kind of. And so just getting together with friends and meeting new people was super easy. We just schedule coffee chats like fika every other day, and then it was super easy to make friends and get to know the Swedish culture. I found the language was a bit challenging in the beginning because, especially in grocery stores, everything was in Swedish. So, especially being someone who has dietary restrictions, finding things that I could eat was a bit challenging. Just going through a list of ingredients was a pain. But I think the language itself was pretty easy to pick up. It's quite similar to English in many ways, and I had good friends that were willing to teach me on a regular basis. So I found it really exciting to just try it out in like coffee shops or at random stores, or just like also being able to understand what people around me are saying. It was just like it was just something new happening all the time. I was learning something new all the time. I kind of miss it now here in Canada. And I think the exchange experience really helped me, especially personally, because I met people from throughout Europe. So they all had very different backgrounds, very different ways of thinking. So having conversations with them just really helped me broaden my perspective. And now I think I am able to relate to a lot of different cultures much better. And it's just the way I think is a lot more diverse as opposed to before. Academically, I think Sweden has a really nice academic culture where their main focus is learning. Their whole education system is focused on getting the learning outcomes you need out of courses. They don't really stress enough on passing or, it's just the focus is you learn in your course. And I think I'm kind of carrying it forward in my courses here where I'm focusing a lot more on getting the learning outcomes as opposed to just passing a course. Whereas before it was a little more of, I need to get this done, let's just power through and get it done. And lastly, I think even professionally, I met people that are working in startups or working in like big corporations within Sweden, and just making those connections has really helped me, even though I might never go work there, but it's just nice to be able to talk with them and then just learn about the different work cultures. I think overall it was a great experience, especially for my own personal growth, and as I mentioned, like academic and professional growth as well.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing your experience in Lund, Sweden. It sounds like an amazing 4 months. Do you want to share what building is behind you?
Yeah, so this is the main university library. It's like one of the two iconic buildings within the city, and it's extremely beautiful, especially during the fall because it has like all the plants outside. It was one of my favorite places to be at.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that you were able to embrace the Swedish culture, but also the culture of a lot of the exchange students that were at your campus as well. So you're able to learn lots of different cultures during your time in Sweden. So like I said, thanks so much for sharing that. We're going to head over to the next country over. We're going to head over to Norway and hear of Katelyn's experience. So Katelyn, if you want to speak to your exchange.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Katelyn, and I'm in my 4th semester of my undergrad in Environment, Resources, and Sustainability. Last fall, I was able to go and study in Norway at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, which was an absolutely phenomenal experience. An average day in my program was pretty similar to what you'd see here at UW. I'd get up, go to class, spend a few hours in the library, which is the building behind me. My friends used to call it the Hogwarts building. And so just study there with some of my friends, and then either we'd go to the beach when it was still warm out and swim in the fjord, or we'd do it one of the hikes in town as there were mountains right in Trondheim, or just go to a friend's house or my house for dinner. So that was kind of more typical to what you'd see at home. But then on the weekends, that was when I had more fun and would go on all different types of trips and just exploring the beautiful outdoors that Norway has. It's unlike anything I've seen before. There's just so much hiking and oceans and mountains, and it was absolutely beautiful. I really, really enjoyed living in Norway. Their culture is fantastic, and as I just mentioned, very focused on the outdoors, which is something I really enjoyed and have continued to bring into my life back here even. And to my honest surprise, I did okay managing in Norwegian, which was a shock to me because I didn't know any going to Norway. I couldn't say hi properly. And so I could get to the grocery store after only a couple of weeks, which is, as Subhan mentioned, I also have dietary restrictions, and that's kind of difficult. But then you get the hang of it really fast. Another thing I really enjoyed was also, like Subhan mentioned, I had friends from all over the world, and so it wasn't just the Norwegian culture that I was able to experience, but I was able to experience some French culture and German and a lot of European cultures all in one, and that was a really awesome, kind of unexpected experience I was able to have. And now I have couches all over the world to crash on when we're able to travel again, which is always a good thing. I would say my exchange helped me in every single way imaginable. Professionally, I got my last co-op because of field course I was able to take in Norway, which was super. Academically, it was amazing to see how their classes were structured differently from the ones at UW. Plus, as I just said, the field course I was able to take and just experiencing how they do fieldwork in another country was something I will definitely take forward into my career. I also really improved my time management skills as I wanted to fit in all the traveling I was able to do. And so just having the time management to do all my schoolwork so that I was able to go travel is something I really improved upon and has helped me into my life since Norway. And finally, this exchange just helped me personally in so many ways. I made new lifelong friends from all over the world in different walks of life that I still talk to daily. I learned to enjoy the more mundane joys of life and appreciate the beauty around me. Plus, I grew on a personal level in a lot of ways. Being abroad has so many challenges, but huge rewards for powering through them. I've taken all that I've learned in Norway and continue to apply it here, and I'm so grateful for my experience abroad and would definitely encourage you to do the same.
Amazing. It sounds like an amazing opportunity to see the Northern Lights, to go to the fjords after classes and all that fun stuff. So thanks for sharing your experience. So like I said, you can type in your questions about their experience into the chat if you're curious about anything, and we'll answer those soon. But next, we're going to head over to Japan and hear about Dorothy's experience.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Dorothy. I'm in my 4th year of Global Business and Digital Arts in the Arts faculty. Shout out to GBA fam. And this time last year, I was at Akita International University in Akita, Japan. It's a more rural area, kind of to the north. So it's a little further than Tokyo and from all the usual city bustle of modern Japan. But yeah, for me, an average day in my program was basically class in the morning, learning about, say, anime and Japanese visual culture, maybe. And then a cafeteria lunch with the local cuisine. And then after lunch, I'd be studying in the beautiful Nakajima Library and work on some group assignments there. Afterwards, I'd probably take dinner at the mall. Sometimes it would be Japanese hot pot style, or ramen, or sushi, or JBBQ, or also just trying some of the local family restaurants too that are kind of scattered around the mall. And yeah, when we came back, usually I'd be socializing in the lounge or exploring the campus and the local shrines in the area too. But also there were a lot of opportunities to travel on the weekends, both organized by the school for students, like taking a bus trip to experience rural Japan and historic sites, and also organized independently. So between friends and just traveling, flying to places like Sendai and Hokkaido and Tokyo, trying all the foods there and going to the festivals that are hosted there seasonally. But yeah, studying abroad, I learned really early on to be open and up for trying anything, even when it's intimidating. The local culture is so rich, and AIU makes a really strong effort to share that with the students. Since AIU is an international university, we're learning in English, and we're also learning alongside local Japanese students, as well as other international students from around the world. And a lot of the international students are actually there to study Japanese. So even though I did take Japanese at Waterloo, I still learned a lot from them when it came to communicating with Japanese residents and staff off of campus. I was definitely lucky to be in a community that's accustomed to having a lot of new international students every term. It's definitely a big help when the staff is understanding that not everyone's on the same level of Japanese, but also you can meet people who can kind of be your local tour guide as well, and help interpret the language. But honestly, my time abroad was unforgettable. I'm definitely more aware and more considerate of cultural differences, which helps me to be a lot more patient when communicating with others. I've made wonderful friends, which I still talk to today, and sometimes we'll watch anime together on the weekends. I also started journaling as a result of this exchange, and keeping a planner. So that kind of helped me stay on top of my time and stay organized better. I'm more confident, I think, in what I do. I'm always ready to learn from my mistakes, and I'm always excited to meet new people and try new things. But yeah, I really hope that I can travel back to Japan in the future, just to visit friends and professors that I've met there, but also travel around the world in the future to see my international friends in person once more.
Wonderful. Like I said, thanks so much for sharing. It's always cool to see the personal growth that you get while on exchange. It's a long 4 months, so it's interesting to see kind of the before you and the after you. And I think between Subhan, Katelyn, and Dorothy, you all touched on a really interesting topic of, being in a country that their first language isn't English, but still being able to navigate that. I think that's a lot of students have questions about that and can be hesitant on going to a place that their first language isn't English. So great to hear your experience. We also have a GBDA student on the call who is supporting you, Dorothy. And next, we're going to go over to Australia and hear about Connor's experience. So Connor, we would love to hear from you. Oh, we can't hear your audio. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, because I have like 2 different buttons I'm trying to work on. Anyways,
yeah.
So I went to Australia. My name is Connor, and I'm studying urban planning with a co-op. So during my 3A term, so roughly around this time, I was able to travel abroad to Macquarie University, which is located in Sydney, Australia. I really liked that experience. The Australian culture was so rich, and I loved exploring every aspect of the host city. So like something I would usually do on a daily basis would be I'd wake up bright and early. I'd go to the gym, which was included in my residence. So I was able to get free access to all meals, all laundry sites were on my university college, and as well as the gym. So I woke up bright and early just to make sure there was not a lot of people there. And then roughly around like 7:30, I'd have breakfast, and I'd eat with all of my floor mates. We just grabbed breakfast. It was a great, they had a variety of vegan options, vegetarian options. They catered to a wide variety of people, so it was great to see all that diversity. And then usually in the morning we'd have class, so we'd either have a lecture or a tutorial. But one thing that was really different in Australia that I kind of came to realize is that they already pre-recorded their lectures and speaking notes, and they posted them online. So lectures were not really necessarily like mandatory like some of the classes at Waterloo previously, but before we transitioned to an online environment. So what happened in like say UW courses, we might have like participation marks, or we might even have iClicker questions throughout the lecture, or even recorded lectures now. But in Australia, they would have those pre-recorded lectures where you would be able to access them all day, every day, and I can actually still log into my account and access them now, which is really neat. So you can still see what you're learning, or even go back to concepts. So midday, I'd stop by and have some lunch before going out and exploring the CBD, or the Central Business District, which is kind of like downtown Toronto, if you're referring back to Canada. So what we would do there is we'd try to go downtown, find a beach and do some surf lessons, or even do a coastal walk along Bondi Beach to Coogee Beach, or even walking around different universities' campuses. The train actually stopped right outside of my university, so it was about a 40-minute train ride, and it was very cheap, which was really great. One good thing about my accommodations, I lived at Robert Menzies College. They had the option to order like a late dinner. So if I were to be going on these like day excursions, or even just like an evening excursion, I could just order a late dinner, pick it up whenever, and then hang out with my friends in the evening just to wrap the day off. So in Australia, obviously, the primary language was English, which was very easy for me to adapt to. But actually around this time last year, exactly a year ago, last year, I was able to travel through Southeast Asia. So if you kind of notice on the map, there's all these like color-coded dots. So all the color-coded pink dots, those were all included on my backpacking journey. So roughly around the middle of those dots, that's where I was. I was in Phuket, Thailand about a year ago today, and I was able to immerse myself in the Southeast Asian culture, where obviously the primary language was not English. So in that area, I kind of found it difficult because I never really did take any Thai courses or even Malay courses. So one thing that I found that was really helpful was trying to find basic words like please, thank you, washroom or toilet, food, water in the primary language. So it's kind of easier to communicate. But other than that, like they're very most of the countries that I've been, or all the countries I've been to on that journey, I was able to have a lot of, there's a lot of pictures there to help with, like, say, ordering food on a menu, or even to public transit. There's a lot of great signs, so don't worry if you're trying to travel to a country where you do not know the foreign or the primary language spoken. But back to Australia, so the culture there, they had a very social atmosphere. So even though things in Australia were more expensive due to them being on an island and nowhere near any other country, part-time and casual-time jobs paid a lot more than they do in Canada. So the minimum wage in Canada is roughly around $14. In Australia, the minimum wage would be around $19 to $20 an hour, and casual jobs would be even more because they're just on a kind of an hourly, weekly basis. So also a lot of Australians are very sociable. So usually outside of those regular business hours, 9 to 5, you will always find someone or clubs or any types of parks. They're always busy. They're always something to do there. And they also really take that time to make sure that everybody's out and being active into the community. It is a very strict 9 to 5 schedule, and you can even see that through the university. A lot of parts on campus really do close. So when I was studying in Waterloo, I'd stay in the library till midnight. But in their eyes, a lot of the libraries on campus close at 6 p.m. So I'd be studying away, and then the security guards would come up to me. This happened. This is a real true story. They come up to me. They'd be like, "ID, please. You're not supposed to be here." And I was freaking out. I was scared. I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just an exchange student." And they're like, "Oh yeah, the building's closed." But yeah, I'm like, "Okay, I will never do it again." But anyways, long story short, that's what happened. And so it's just like a little things that you would never really think about. Were very different. So yeah, going back to university, many university students that are from Australia, they don't really move close to the university, and they don't have like the university culture that we typically have in Canada or the States, where we always stay there and university is 100% our mindset. They have another job. So usually they do university two to three times a week, and then they commute and do their work. So in about 3 or 4 of my classes that I took, about 50% of all those students had full-time jobs in this field of study, which is really cool. And this exchange really has helped me through personal, academic, and professionally. So like through a professional basis. Before my exchange, I was applying to co-ops where I'd have to leave about 1.5 months early, so that's about half of your co-op. This allowed me to be very communicative of this process, and I had to tell them once I got an interview, I had to tell them within the interview, hey, I was leaving early, as not all universities line up to the same schedule as Waterloo does. But this also helped me accept rejection throughout this co-op process, where employers were very transparent to this was like a make or break for them. It also allowed me to foster open communication, direct communication, so I was able to make sure that they knew what was on my mind and what I had it planned, just so I didn't start the co-op and just be like, oh, actually I'm piecing out halfway through. Academically,
we have about 30 more seconds, and then we'll head to Q&A.
For sure. So personally, I was able to gain independence to help me build confidence. So primarily, I wasn't really able to travel alone. I felt it was like a little bit scary, but this really helped me. And then through academics, I was able to study something that I wasn't really able to study in Waterloo. So I was actually able to really study the development process and the development theory in Southeast Asia rather than European development theory, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, that was my exchange.
Wonderful. You brought up some really great points about co-op. I know a lot of students have questions about that. So thanks for sharing that experience. And you look like you had amazing travels, so even outside Australia. Okay, so now that you've heard from all of our panelists, now we have about 20 minutes, so it's 12:30 right now. We'll have about 20 minutes to ask any questions that you have about their exchange experience. So maybe you want to know what was their favorite food or stuff like that. If you have any questions about the actual specifics, so applying, I'll let you know where you can get information about that a little later on, but we would love to hear your questions. So just type those into the chat. So we do have some frequently asked questions from students, so I would love to hear your responses from all of our panelists about that. So our first one is, did you get your first choice of exchange? I know a lot of students do worry about that, so maybe we'll start with Subhan. Did you want to speak to that question?
Yep, I did.
You got your first choice? Yeah. Wonderful. And Katelyn, let's hear from you.
I also ended up getting my first choice, yeah.
Cool. Okay, and Dorothy?
Yeah, I was also really lucky to get my first choice. But actually, one of my friends, we actually ended up applying for the same university, and she ended up getting her second choice, which was in South Korea. And I think afterwards that might have been probably the better choice for her. I think seeing her experience and everything, and just seeing how well it suited her and her taste and her personality, and just who she grew into afterwards, I think that was just really amazing to see, and she really enjoyed her time there as well. So definitely don't get discouraged if you don't get your first choice. Every abroad experience is really unique and definitely unforgettable.
Yeah, totally. There's so many opportunities out there. So like you said, great point. Don't be discouraged if you don't get your first choice. The opportunities that can come your way from all of our partner schools is really amazing and unique. Connor, did you get your first choice?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I got my first choice.
Great. And then were there any costs that you hadn't anticipated? So is exchange a lot more expensive than staying at Waterloo? Is another common question. So maybe we'll work backwards again. So Connor, did you want to share? So any unanticipated costs, and then how did it compare to Waterloo?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was traveling around, I didn't really consider transportation. And that was just something lack of planning, I think, which is kind of ironic. But anyways, I definitely look up transit costs. If you're looking to travel abroad, look at, or like outside of your host country, make sure that you look at transportation there, as well as phone plans and like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, great point. Dorothy?
I think for me, it was almost unexpected to go on exchange altogether. I didn't actually decide to go on exchange until it was time to apply. So it was a little bit tricky, I think, saving up within a year before I left, but I think I was lucky enough to have almost like a savings for my bucket list fund, just to kind of dip into whenever I kind of wanted to splurge or treat myself while I was abroad, because I don't think limiting my experience while I was abroad would have been ideal for me. So that was something that I was definitely thankful that I had prepared ahead of time. But also, I think residence and meal plan fees, those were also a little bit unexpected, because I thought I would be maybe preparing my own meals or eating out and trying new foods every day. But they did provide a meal plan with the residence, so you could choose whether you wanted either a everyday plan or a lighter plan just for weekdays, so kind of similar to Waterloo, where you can choose your levels. So that was really helpful for me.
Great. Caitlin?
I think in terms of unanticipated costs, it's just like sometimes when you're traveling, there are things that come up that you weren't expecting to cost, like your rental car might be more expensive than you thought. There are a lot of toll roads in Norway, which was a shock to me. The first time I went on a road trip, it was like, oh, this is a giant bill I have to pay now. But so just things like that were slightly unexpected. But yeah, just having like a good sizable budget and making sure you're staying within that will just help offset any of those unanticipated costs.
Good to know. Subhan, let's hear from you.
So in terms of unanticipated costs, I think similar to Connor and Caitlin, mine were also related to exchange. I think the biggest one for me was like just since I was a new traveler, I didn't really consider transportation as much, and just even getting from the airport to the city, I think that was probably the most unanticipated cost for me. I think that was like a planning thing on my end, but still, a lot of different such things popped up when I was traveling. But in terms of living in Sweden, I think the general perception is that Sweden and like a lot of Scandinavia is quite expensive to live in. But that is only if you're like buying a house or buying a car or things like that. Like the everyday things are kind of cheap. I think in Lund everything was focused. Everything was like designed for students, so housing was super cheap, way cheaper than Waterloo even. Food was cheap on campus, and there was a lot of it. So I think my daily living cost in Sweden was lower than it would have been in Waterloo.
Oh, that's interesting to know. Yeah, so if you're going exchange for 4 to 8 months, that's a lot of planning. There's a lot of costs associated with that. So like you all kind of said, budget accordingly as best you can. Okay, so our next question is from Samantha. It's a really good one. How many places did you apply to? So Caitlin, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think if I'm remembering correctly, you get 5 places that you're allowed to put in your list, and so I just filled out all 5 of them. But I was really hoping for Norway.
So you can list up to 4 on your application.
Oh, 4. Then yeah, it was 4.
Seems like forever ago when you applied, I'm sure.
Honestly.
Yeah. Dorothy, how many did you apply for?
Yeah, I also filled out all 4, but I think 2 of them were for the same country, but just different universities. So there's also that option. You can consider that.
Yep. And Connor?
I think I applied to 3. 2 were in Australia, and then 1 was in Switzerland.
Oh, nice. You had a European adventure. And Subhan, how many did you apply for?
I think 4 as well, but I think the top 2 were learned just different semesters.
Okay.
They're all in Europe.
All in Europe.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Samantha, for your question. And now we'll go, so Katelyn, we have a question for you. So how were the classes different in Norway? You spoke a little bit to it, but if you want to elaborate a little more, that would be great. And that was from Navi.
Yeah, so actually my first week was very confusing because it turns out not all of the classes start at the same time throughout the semester. So I showed up for a class and the professor was not there. There was about like half of the students in the class because they were also international students, and we were all just like sitting there very confused, like, do we leave? Do we stay? And then we ended up like emailing the professor, and he said, oh, class doesn't start for another 2 weeks. And so there was that. And then I also had a class that ended after like, I think it was like 6 weeks or something like that. So it ended very early in the semester. And so it was just things like that were very unexpected when I went into the semester, but then it made traveling a little bit easier since I didn't have the same class like all throughout the semester.
Yeah, it's super interesting how courses definitely differ. You're so used to Waterloo by 2 or 3 years you've been at Waterloo, and so changing that can be hard. So thanks for sharing. Connor, this question is for you from Fraser. So they're really excited about your adventure, and they want to know, where else did you go in your time in New Zealand?
All right, so when I went to New Zealand, I went for a week and I explored all of the South Island. So I first stopped in Christchurch, and then I visited my friend that was in New Zealand. I believe it was Dunedin, and then I stopped in Queenstown for like I believe 2 or 3 days, and on those 2 or 3 days I was able to go explore the nightlife. I was able to go to glaciers and climb glaciers. I was also able to visit all the nice forts there. So it was really an amazing experience. I wish I had enough time to explore the North Island, but that was actually during like class time, so I was able to perfectly schedule it. I left right after class one day, and then I came back just the night before an assignment was due. So I made sure that everything was completed and all that. But great experience.
You can definitely pack in a lot in 4 months, but definitely remembering that you're there for your classes as well is important. So sounds like a great opportunity. We have another really good question coming in from Fraser. So how did you pack for your time abroad? Did you go overboard, or were you kind of more on the minimal baggage side? How did you pack? So Subhan, let's hear from you first.
I think I just packed my clothes. That's it. And I don't have a lot of clothes, so it was quite it was clothes and toiletries, but that's about it. Because you can find everything in Sweden, and I'd rather just buy it from there. Yeah, and when I was traveling, I usually just traveled with a backpack because, like, you have to pay a lot for extra luggage, and I was traveling on budget, so I think I went for very minimal, only the things I need.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That said, though, for Sweden, they do a lot of sittnings, which is just like themed parties, sort of. So for those, you kind of need like at least one formal suit. So that's one thing you did take.
Good. Always pack a suit. Katelyn, tell us about your packing.
Yeah, so I actually I'm like, when I'm traveling, I'm a big backpacker, so I only have like a small carry-on backpack that I travel with. But to move to Norway, I actually brought 2 checked bags because Norway is really expensive, and I knew that going in, so I brought like my duvet, pillows, and I also had to pack for 3 different seasons, so like summer, fall, winter, with winter being like really cold, so I had like my snow pants, my winter boots, my winter jacket. So those just ended up taking up a lot of space. But then when I was traveling around in Norway, I was only bringing my little like 25-liter backpack around with me. Yeah.
Awesome. Dorothy?
I think it was pretty, similar for me to Caitlin, where I was also dealing with the change between 3 different seasons, and I had to bring a winter coat. So I think that was what took up the most space in my luggage. I did have 1 large-ish luggage and then 1 medium-sized luggage when I was going, along with a carry-on backpack. But I think a problem that most of us faced when we were going home was that we bought a lot of stuff while we were there. So I think a majority of people were shipping things home. So they would pack a cardboard box and they'd just ship it out from the post office. And then maybe it would take like a month or 2 months to get home by boat. So I think for me, I was a little bit luckier because my parents actually came to visit me in Japan at the end of the term. I took them around Tokyo, and then they provided me with extra luggage space. So it was a little more convenient for me that way.
Yeah, fill your parents' bags. I love it on their way home. Connor?
Yeah, so I knew I really wanted to buy a lot of stuff from my time abroad, and I knew I kind of had like a picture of that. I wanted to explore other countries, so I kind of set a little bit of side space in my luggage beforehand, so I was going a little bit empty-handed. I did have 2 checked bags, and believe it or not, Australia does have kind of like a winter and a summer, even though everybody thinks it's so hot. So I was going in the middle of winter, and then when I left, it was the middle of summer. So the temperature range isn't as big as Canada, but there was still some coats to pack for. So I had to make sure I was getting all those in. So
Great, yeah. So we have about 5 more minutes for questions, so I'll ask a few more that are coming in. We have one from Tina, who says, I realize that the orientation dates for NT and U are in mid-August, which is also around the final exam time here at Waterloo. So just wondering if you or anyone that faced a similar problem, so term dates not really aligning if you took a term in the spring, or can anyone speak to that experience? Maybe Caitlin?
I can, if you would like me to.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was actually taking an additional course during that spring term. And so in Australia, that they usually start studying their, their fall term, or are considered fall term, in the middle of July. So the terms really do overlap, and I was able to contact the professor to make sure I was writing the exam remotely in a different location and a different proctor. And so I was able to connect with my host school in Australia, and they were really accommodating. So for writing those final exams, those papers or whatever. So yeah, all I would do is just contact them, like study abroad team at the host institution. They'll gladly help you out.
Wonderful, yeah. Important to use your contacts. Did anybody else have that problem of orientation starting before they could complete their Waterloo exam?
Well, for me, I didn't have an exam, so I was actually supposed to be on a co-op semester during the spring 2019 term, but I didn't end up taking it just because I was planning to leave at the beginning of August, so I could settle in and like do a little bit of traveling before orientation started. So I actually, because of my program, was able to take a field course in, I believe it was at the beginning of July, and those don't have final exams, they just have like a final assignment. And so it ended up working really well for myself, but I know there was another UW student who went to Oslo, and he ended up missing the beginning of orientation, but then because of his exams at UW, but then was able to do the last bit of the week of orientation. And he still found it a really valuable experience.
Yeah, so definitely it could happen, and it's good that you're thinking about that now. Okay, so we have another question from Navi. How easy is it to meet new people and make friends in the countries you exchanged in? So maybe we can quickly hear from Subhan.
It was super easy. We had a 5-week-long orientation, and the whole point of that was to make good friends that you could be with even after orientation. So like my orientation group was 30 people, and we were all people from different parts of the world. So it was like the international group. So we still have Zoom calls with them. I think it was really easy for me to make friends, especially because of that orientation. And even outside of that, like I mentioned before, like there are these things called nations, it's just like student groups basically, but they're sort of like the sorority in the U.S., but they're not the same as sororities. Like these are supposed to be open, welcoming to everybody. They're not like this special group. So they're very inclusive as opposed to being exclusive, but they had a lot of events, and you could always just go to them and make friends. So overall, it was really easy to meet new people and make friends.
Great. And then just for time's sake, I think we'll go to the next question. We'll just ask one question per student, if that's okay. So Tina has another really good question for Katelyn. Was it easy to travel to other countries from, I'm not going to be able to say this right, Trondheim? Is that where the campus is?
Yeah, Trondheim. Yeah, it took me a while to get the hang of it. So it actually was. There's an airport in Trondheim, and there's like a bus that goes right from the student village I was living in to the airport. So it was easy to travel. I actually surprised a friend from here in Paris and went to Copenhagen. But I actually did a lot of my traveling within Norway because of how expensive it is to fly from Scandinavia to mainland Europe. And so just so that I could fit in more trips within my budget, I just found it easier to travel within Norway. But it's definitely easy if you're willing to like continuously look for cheap flights, or you're willing to spend a little bit more on your flights. It's definitely really easy.
Quick tip, if you're traveling from Oslo or Copenhagen, fly to London before and then fly to mainland Europe. It's way cheaper. London is like $10 flight.
Oh, wow. Good hot tip if you're going to Scandinavia.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Amy. Did you go abroad during a co-op or study term? So I know Connor and Katelyn, you spoke to co-op. Connor, did you want to answer that question?
Yeah, for sure. So basically the way my exchange started, it was halfway through my first co-op term, and it went until the ending of like our regular fall term for studying. So what I had to do is I had to make sure that during the interview process, my employer was okay and they knew that I was studying abroad and I was going to be leaving mid-July for that. They were really happy about the opportunity and they were totally for it. So when it was time for me to study abroad and then stop my co-op, I was able to receive all my performance evaluations, complete all my assignments for PD and all that, and then was just able to progress into exchange.
Wonderful. Okay, and I think we have time for one more question quickly. So were you able to take the courses that you needed for your program, or did you get to take some courses that aren't offered at Waterloo? So this is a really popular question among students. Dorothy, did you want to answer?
Yeah, I think most of the courses that I took weren't your typical GBDA courses. So you might have seen yesterday on my stories, but I took Mass Media and Society, Intercultural Communication, Anime and Japanese Visual Culture, science and art history as well. So the reason why my selection is so broad is because the way GBDA sets you up to go abroad, you have a large variety of courses that you're allowed to take while you're abroad, and that also go towards a GBDA degree. So I think the most important part is you have to make sure your courses are valid towards your degree. I think that goes for any program, and that also really influences your university choice, because at the end of the day, you still have to make sure you have to graduate. So, yeah.
Yes, important that you graduate still. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so that is going to wrap up our Q&A. Thank you, everyone. Those were some great responses. Okay, so if this really inspired you to go on exchange and want to learn more about the process, your next step would be to attend a mandatory information session. So if you do want to apply for fall 2021, winter or spring 2022, you do need to attend a mandatory info session. And our next one is coming up on Saturday, actually, so that's the 26th. If you can't attend that one, we have one on the 30th. We just posted a link in the chats to where you can find a full list of our fall term dates. And we look forward to seeing you there, hopefully. And then another thing that you can do if you want to continue on the exchange experience is the GEC. So what is the GEC? Oops, the GEC is a Global Experience Certificate, and what it does is it's a certificate that you get upon graduation if you complete all of the requirements, and it really shows you as well as employers how you've really internationalized your degree. And what's really great is one of the components is exchange. So if you do go on exchange, that's a pretty big check off the list. I know that Katelyn as well as Connor are participants in the GEC. So Connor, did you want to quickly speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a really great experience where you're able to develop your language skills as well as receive volunteer experience and an international experience. So one thing that I really thought was cool is that for my global studies credit within the GEC, I was able to actually get that abroad. So instead of learning about the typical planning theories that are originated in European and English cultures, I was able to learn about all the different types of development theories in Southeast Asia, which I thought was completely crazy. And there were such a great opportunities to learn about the different issues and all that. So it really made my degree that much more unique compared to everybody else's, to be honest. So I thought it was a great opportunity.
Yeah, why not add on to your degree? It's an opportunity that's out there. Katelyn?
Yeah, so I actually just found out about the GEC after I got back from my exchange, so I'm still working on mine. But I think the main thing for me is that it's really been about self-reflection and learning and recognizing all the new skills that I got from my exchange. And that's been really interesting to look at. And I think the main one for me is I definitely an introvert, but I still I totally improved my people skills in Norway. Doing this, I wouldn't have been able to do probably before going abroad. I'm just like Dorothy mentioned, just more confident and able to talk to new people, and I think understanding new cultures and being able to be patient and relate to those new cultures and people has been something really valuable. And just reflecting on that, you have to write a reflection piece for the GEC, and that was really something valuable I gained from my pursuit of the GEC.
Yeah, so exchange and GEC can be really great during your time here at Waterloo, and I think that's a really good point that you are moving to a different country potentially, so you don't have to be this really big personality. You can be an introvert and have an amazing time and meet a ton of people. So thanks for sharing that. So just if you are interested in the GEC, you can head to our website. We'll post a link in the chat for that. The contact is Dr. Sandra Lopez Rocha. She's the Intercultural Learning Specialist, and she is amazing. She knows everything that you need to know about the GEC. And then there are some requirements that you can receive retroactive credit. So maybe you're in your 4th year and you've already done a few of the requirements. That's great. That can be checked off the list now. You don't have to redo anything. And then what's also great is that there's no fees associated with the GEC. And if you are interested, you can apply at any point during your undergrad, but it is recommended that you do it before your last term. So any questions, just connect with Sandra through that GEC email. And then before we head off and thank our participants, we have one more Mentimeter that we'll share. So just head back to menti.com and use the same code. And we would love to know, did this inspire you today? So where do you want to go? And maybe one emoji that would describe your feeling of exchange. So I'll leave this open for a few seconds. We have a few people anywhere. Awesome. There's going to be tons of options for you. I think we have over 100 partner schools. So New Zealand, we do have a school there. Hopeful, definitely. You know, if you are applying, it's about a year and a half away. So Finland, Norway, so definitely inspired some Scandinavian exchanges. Korea, England, a heart emoji, that's good. Japan, I don't know what emoji that is, but it's cool and I like it. Lots of people interested in New Zealand, so the more people respond the same answer, the bigger the word gets. Europe, anywhere in Europe, amazing. I'll leave it open for about 30 more seconds just to hear your response. Yeah, so thank you for our panelists for kind of taking us around the world today and hearing your exchange. Really unique perspectives. And then if we weren't able to answer your question, or maybe you think of a question later on, you can just feel free to email us at studyabroad@uwaterloo.ca. Thank you for joining us today and hearing the stories. And just a reminder, it is going to be recorded, so if you want to listen to it again or share it with some of your friends, it's going to be posted on our Go Abroad Waterloo page. So thank you so much again for joining, and thank you to our panelists for sharing your experience. That's the end of our session today, so thanks so much for coming. Awesome. Fraser said, this is a really eye-opening and inspiring, so thank you. You have lots of support from everybody attending. Okay, so that's it, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks again.